hung on a white crossbelt. The crossbelt takes the weight over the left shoulder, and the box hangs on the right hip. The normal load would be 30 rounds. Normal contents would be 30. Sometimes they would try and squeeze an extra 15 or 20 in there. But really, firefights were not long. You couldn't stand in front of a firefight and sustain the kind of trading of lead necessary for long. It was just not humanly possible. The thing the British like to do: deploy the troops behind a hill so that nobody could see them. Then the enemy would almost get to the top. You'd advance your troops, who would fire a volley, cheer, and charge with the bayonet, and that would time and again send the French running back down the hill. It's surprise, it's the fire shock, and it's seeing the front rank and a half fall dead, and you in a subsequent rank would then be next in line. So you get instant. It's triggering panic. It's triggering that breakdown in morale and willingness to stand and take fire.
Right.
So that's presumably the British unit reforming.
Yes. So they disengage until what they consider to be a fairly safe distance, and they try and regroup. Meanwhile, I'm going to use the extra space to keep attacking them, but with a fresh unit this time. So this is not the unit that was engaging them previously.
Okay,
We've got a fresh unit in. If we compare the fatigue bar over here, you can see that this unit that was engaging them earlier has lost more fatigue compared to this unit.
Okay.
So yeah, the game for each line actually keeps track of the fatigue levels of the unit as well as the morale levels, and we can get more detailed status of the units, of the different skills they have, with different weapon types, experience, etc.
Right.
So for people who are really into the details and really want to get into all the small things, it's all there. If you prefer to feel more like the commander, you don't want to be bothered with the exact reloading skill of any individual unit. I suppose you would leave that to other people.
It's interesting to look at the problems of higher command. Because they couldn't get involved in that kind of detail, or the kind of losses that a particular unit might have taken, when arranging the front line of a battle, they would assume that a battalion would take up a fixed distance, a fixed physical space. If the unit was up to strength, that wasn't a problem. They'd form in 3 ranks. The British would form in 3 ranks, so would everybody else. It was normal, and a limitation imposed by the muskets. If they were short of men, they would reduce that to 2 ranks, and if they were even shorter of men, they would try and do it with 1. But more probably, they would be withdrawn to a reserve position to act as a sort of moral support to the troops in front.
Right.
Oh, there's another one on the go.
Yep, so we're already pushing up. Alright, so we just managed to push back a good number of the British. So they're running away. These guys trying to reform and come back in again. If I can get these two to rally, I can actually claim this slightly hillish position. So there's a bit elevated ground over here.
Yeah.
If I can hold that, it basically pressures the Allied flank to such an extent.
Very much so.
It will force them to reorganize.
Well, if Wellington's already sent reinforcements over to Papillotte at the other end of the wing, and we can draw reinforcements, more reinforcements away from the centre to this part of the battlefield, which is what I think we'll do. Then that leaves his centre weaker and more vulnerable to the next phase of Napoleon's grand plan.
Right, so they're running away, and I'm going to give the orders to advance onto location, to do as Ian just said, get there with all haste and then wait.
Yes, exactly.
And I probably want to give my artillery the order to come close and support as well.
Yes.
To help fight off any counterattack.
I'm a great believer in getting artillery up close to the enemy. Otherwise, you get a lot of bang and whoosh, but not many casualties.
Right. So
I think you could get a Marshal Spatten for this.
that would be lovely.
Yeah. I'll speak to the boss. You don't get a rise, but you do get a wooden stick, painted wooden stick.
And was that the typical kind of reward that officers will get? Or?
No, a Marshal Spatten is about the highest accolade you could get in the French army, short of actually becoming Napoleon yourself. And I don't think there's any chance of that.
Right. That's unfortunate. Now guys, unfortunately coming back and reforming, don't quite like that. Please keep up the pressure. I'm gonna need to move in there myself as well, so my couriers don't have to travel the vast distances. And if you're close enough, of course, they can hear your shouts, presumably.
Yes.
You're in a very short distance.
There's going to be a bump, I think.
There might very well be, because it's one of the things, also because of my doing here, because I set to take command from the AI. Basically, there's less autonomy for the officer, as would be historically. Basically, he turned off his own mind in this game to get full control. If you were going for a full historical battle, you wouldn't probably do that.
No.
And there's also a difference between these local officers. Some are more inclined to attack, some are more cowardice and more retreat soon.
Yes. Let's not say cowards. They are French. They'd be cautious.
Cautious, yes. Let's say cautious.
Mindful of their pensions.
So finally we get them to form a line, but they suffer a couple of casualties. So these guys are coming in to flank though.
Yeah.
So let's have that in double time. We got our artillery moving up. They should be positioning, let's see. They're going to position right about here, so I need to have some units they're close to.
To protect the artillery.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I'm going to set them up. So you can see the artillery is limbering and unlimbering when it has to move. It can be moved just by the foot soldier by pushing it, but that's only for very short distances.
Yes.
I don't like what these guys are doing at all, by the way. They're exposing their flank to the chateau. They're getting pounded by artillery. You can actually see the trail of casualties.
Yes.
I'm going to have them like that. And these couriers we talked about briefly, they can get intercepted as well. If the enemy intercepts them, they might even read the message that was being carried. So that also means in multiplayer you could get an idea of each other's strategies if you can get your cavalry to intercept enemy couriers.
It was a problem. I think on occasions they would issue duplicate orders and send them by different couriers and different routes in order to make sure we got through. But on a battlefield like this, there wasn't a lot of time. Wellington particularly was keen on being in the thick of the action, so he could see what was going on himself and issue instructions without having to wait for intermediaries.
Right. So we push that out here. We're going to reform the line, and I'm going to retreat these guys. They've had a bit of a pounding. And we're going to quickly go over to the other room now.
Hi guys, we're back with Field of Glory Napoleonics, and I'm here with Napoleon. So Napoleon, could you give us an update on the current situation on the battlefield? And we're actually behind enemy lines at the moment. He's standing over where Wellington should be, but this gets us in good camera shot.
Yeah, we're progressing nicely. We're just moving on to Hougoumont, which has been assaulted.
So this is the second assault going in on Hougoumont.
Just here.
Let me see, we'll get the camera in a bit closer so we can see. So we even have some smoke now, we have the technology.
Yep, we've reinforced the attack, so hopefully we'll get progression. We've also moved on to Papillotte, which has been assaulted. And
so Papillotte, the attack went through on Papillotte, so we saw the French get the upper hand at the beginning of that assault, and that looks like French flags flying over Papillotte.
That's right, so our next objective is to win the second half of that.
Oh, so you still only captured half of Papillotte so far?
Still hard going.
Some more Nassaus to get rid of.
Yep,
and is there some cavalry skirmishing going on over here, or is that?
That's basically a skirmish to just work out where the infantry are arriving.
Ah, right. So over there, off that road, is where the Prussians or French reinforcements could be arriving from.
That's right. We've also brought Marshal Ney up to supervise the next stage of the battle.
So Marshal Ney's now at with the Grand Battery.
That's right, just here.
So are the British still on the hill, or have they retired behind the hill?
Yes, they've. The Grand Battery's managed to force some units back and cause some disorder. So we're preparing the way for the main attack.
And where will your main attack go?
Well, most of these forces around here, with cavalry support, will be coming over the ridges to assault this area here.
And what about La Haye Saint? Is that not going to be a pain in your flank?
It will be. Hopefully we'll take some precautions to limit the damage that can cause.
Okay, so how much time do you think the French need to prepare for this main assault?
It could be about another, perhaps half an hour.
Oh, so it's imminent.
Imminent.
Very good. So, just looking here at the British line, everything still looks fairly under control at the moment. Not too many casualties here. Most of the casualties, I guess, are at Hougoumont and Papillotte at the moment, and just a few artillery casualties in the line. Are the British counter-battery firing? I see a lot of French guns firing, but do the British have their own artillery firing back, or are they waiting for something?
Well, I think they're waiting for the main assaults, holding their powder dry, as it were.
Was there a reason to save? Do they have limited ammunition, or?
Well, I think it's just mainly to take out the big blocks of infantry. Counter-battery fire wasn't that effective.
Right, so it's just a waste of time and get the guys tired, and better to save their energy for later in the battle.
That's correct.
Thanks very much for the update, Napoleon. Good luck with the battle.
Thank you.
And we are going to head back now over to the digital version, Scourge of War Digital.
Alright, and then we're back over here at the digital game, and you tuned in back just in time because we got a English counterattack coming up in Columbi Division's formation. So we got, what is it, probably full brigade over here, slowly marching up. While my flank is already being engaged, you can see easily being pounded by the British artillery batteries over here. So I'm going to take a significant amount of damage. I just try to reorganize my line a bit, get some fresh troops into the front, and get the fatigue troop back into the rear to reform.
I'm just jumping in to see how things are going in Scourge of War as well. So if you're just joining us or you're just catching up, we are doing a reenactment of the Battle of Waterloo. We'll be doing it all day. So far, the French have had a major victory at the initial assault on Hougoumont, which meant that they pushed. You didn't actually capture the town, did you, Matthew? You just pushed someone up to the forest. That's what was defined as a major victory in the first scenario. And then onto Papillotte. The French did capture Papillotte. That was around 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock local time in Waterloo. And now we are back at Hougoumont, and Bart is taking the French forward to try and, I think you're outflanking Hougoumont rather than assaulting it.
Exactly, exactly. If we're going to take a quick look at the map over here, we can see Hougoumont is here. And so we started from this position, and rather than assaulting the fortress directly to my front, I went around it, and I'm now directly threatening the entire flank of the British.
And one of the important things I think about this is that Hougoumont was being supplied with ammunition and supplies through the back door. So by cutting off that back door entrance, the Hougoumont will then be out of supply, and although it may still take some punishment, it becomes a much easier nut to crack once that ammo resupply is out of the way.
Exactly. So here, so we just pushed out the British from these locations. You can see the casualties lying over here.
There are lots of casualties now.
And the French as well, where the lines formed. So you can even
Yeah.
just by the depth you can see
tell
where the battle
story
line
of the battle. Yes.
So we pushed them over here. We reformed on this hill, which is like the victory location for this scenario, that being the hill threatening the British flank. And they just launched a counterattack. So they're setting up fresh troops now against one of that.
Your position looks pretty strong though. You seem to have more men uphill,
Exactly.
a longer line, so it looks pretty safe at the moment.
I should be safe for now, yes. My only fear is the continuous pounding of the batteries over here.
So you're under artillery fire.
Yes. We can see that, especially these guys taking a lot of punishment.
Ah yes, the end of your line is really being thinned out.
So these units are fatigued. They've suffered 263 casualties already.
Out of how many men would that be?
They only have 324 left.
So that's nearly 50% casualties.
Exactly. So
I mean, that's pretty significant.
yes. So I'm thinking of bringing them back a bit.
I mean, in the period, casualty rates were generally much lower than more modern warfare. So you didn't get entire battalions annihilated before they ran away. So a 50% casualty rate would mean that's a pretty fragile formation, I'd have thought. Now,
Yes, it's a formation that is also fatigued, and should there be a charge coming in, they will probably rout very quickly.
Ian, have a seat.
So order them out of combat for now again, and I'm going to move them to my rear, let them rest, and probably let them lie down to take cover from artillery fire. And meanwhile, I've moved up my own artillery, so they're being closer to the action now.
So you can fire overhead because you're on the hill into that British formation down there below.
Exactly, yes. If we see over here, we can see the shooting over status is highlighted, so that means they're not firing like directly at the enemy, but shooting over my own line.
So they have to raise the barrels up slightly.
Exactly. So it's
I assume this would have reduced their accuracy somewhat if they were firing over their own troops here.
It's not ideal. The ideal for these guys, because they fire around a smooth round ball, the idea was to be on the same level as the target and get it to drop, make a first drop in front of the target so that it then bounced through the first line, and it could carry on bouncing just like skimming stones on the seashore. It could bounce 6-7 times if you were really lucky, and if there's somebody in the way, it's not going to stop the ball.
Must have made a horrible mess.
yeah.
Well, this is I mentioned earlier one of my heroes of Waterloo, William Lawrence, or of the war really. He ended up at Waterloo in the Grenadier Company because his stature changed from when he was a young lad. And he was a sergeant, and he was pulled out from his section and made to join the colour party because the people of the colour party had been shot. So the officer went and got him, brought him back to the colour party, and within a minute the officer had his head blown to pieces, and William Lawrence got brains spattered all over him.
Lovely.
And the officer died.
Really?
He did, yes.
There's a surprise.
Yes.
Having your head blown off by a cannonball is usually a good way to make sure someone dies.
Yes.
So I thought you had lots of casualties then, Bart, but you've told those guys to lie
Yes,
down.
I told them to lie down. They're not firing at anything. There's nothing threatening them directly.
But if there was, that would probably be a horrible situation to get caught in, I assume.
If there was, the AI will not keep there lying and be shot. They will stand up.
Right.
And, again, you never have, even with the take command button on, they're still, when it concerns their lives.
Right, they won't do anything you tell them to. They have a self-preservation.
Exactly, yes.
Going back a couple of 100 years to when the musket was fairly new and people didn't know how to drill the troops in it the way it was being done now, about half the French army decided that everybody in the unit would fire at the same time. No, each rank would fire and then fall flat on its face. And then the second rank would fire and fall flat on its face. And then the third rank would fire and fall flat on its face. Then they'd all get up and reload together. It was an idea that didn't catch on.
Yes, does seem like some wasted time there. So I don't know that much about it, but from my understanding, the British were much faster at reloading than the other nationalities in general. They were more drilled in the reloading.
We like to think that, and the number of rounds they could fire in a minute seems to escalate as time passes. If you could get off 3 rounds in a minute with this weapon, the smooth bore musket, you were doing really well. Now the best troops that France produced in this war were taken off by Napoleon in his Grande Armée to Russia in 1812. And some of those units, you were talking about casualties earlier, some of those units had 1% survival rate, principally from...
Was that the Russian winter?
That was the Russian winter, but then there were huge battles on the way in. The principal one I remember now is Borodino, where I've been. Anyway, that's a separate story. Huge casualties. So the troops that Napoleon is using here are not experienced veterans.
Right, they're not the same quality as the British.
No.
Not seen as much action.
The British are, by and large, experienced veterans. There are some troops that were never used before in action, which came directly from Britain, like the Royal North British Dragoons, who we know as the Scots Greys. This is the only battle they fought in the whole war.
They do a famous part of this battle, aren't they?
I think it might be the 79th foot hung onto their stirrups and went with them.
I think, wasn't it?
Yes, Highlanders, exactly. And it's a very famous action, and it did knock back the French attack by D'Erlon in the centre, but ultimately it didn't really make a huge amount of difference, because the Scots Greys got caught by French lancers on the wrong side of the valley when they were unformed. As Bart was saying earlier, charging is a risky business. You go in and you may kill the enemy you're hoping to kill, but there is always another enemy, and by the time you've finished fighting the one you were sent to attack, you are completely disorganised and you need to reform. The British cavalry were notorious for not coming back. They would charge off, and that would be the last you'd see for them until the next day.
Very undisciplined. The British cavalry is famous for that for a
Well,
long time.
there are theories, because imagine a line of troops. It can be 1 or 2 ranks deep, 3 ranks, it doesn't matter. But there are officers at each end, there are officers behind, and there should be officers in front. All the other nations had officers in front to lead the charge and to control it. The British only had officers behind and at the side, so there was nobody to say stop.
Right.
And
no
if
one
you
wants to be in the front, do they, really?
well, no, I suppose not.
I've heard stories about the Spanish talking about training and experience. I think some Spanish units were put into action before they'd ever fired their muskets before. So the first time they fired was actually in battle. And I've heard stories that the noise of their own gunfire terrified them.
And they all ran away.
That's the story I've heard.
I think about half of one unit ran away, and it was at Talavera. But Napoleon had tricked the French monarchy into coming to a conference in the south of France, the Pyrenean coast, and then kept them there and said, right, Spain's mine now, we've got your king, you can have one that I'll nominate for you. And because it was a centralist monarchy, all the instructions, everything was organised from Madrid. So suddenly Madrid is in foreign hands, and organising the different regional armies was very difficult, and a lot of politics got involved. And we were talking earlier about the French army being a meritocracy, and other armies suffering from aristocracy imposing itself without any knowledge, understanding, training, experience. It was worst in France. It was worst in Spain, where a lot of the aristocracy would not deal with aristocracy from another part of the country. The committees, the juntas, running the regional affairs were disunited and playing politics and generally not. And it took Wellington being appointed to command the Spanish army as well as the British Allied army to start knocking some sense and coherent strategy into them.
Yeah, the Spanish weren't known for their military contribution during the Napoleonic War.
Well, that's not true actually. The Spanish guerrillas
fair
killed
enough.
more French soldiers in the peninsula than the British army did.
Well, okay. Shows what I know.
But it wasn't the organised army, it
Yeah.
was individuals. There's nothing wrong with Spaniards,
It was the leadership.
they were
Okay.
brave people and prepared to fight for their homelands. And it wasn't just the men, it was the women and kids. At one of the sieges the French won against a Spanish city, the population fought against them, and the guerrillas, they included women who got stuck in as well. Quite terrifying when you think about it.
So what's happening here now?
Woman with guns on the wrong week of the month.
So what was happening, you might have seen these guys retreat from their previous line when we can see the line of that where they
Yep.
were standing. I retreated them because I reformed my artillery and they were blocking the line of sight of my artillery.
Okay.
So I retreated them and then my artillery was so close to the firing canister
Ooh.
on the enemy line.
So they've made a real mess.
the
So-
Brits took some fire and then decided, okay, let's take a couple of steps back.
For people that don't know too much about this, there are two principal types of ammunition they would have fired. The round shot and the canister. I think there are others as well, but that was the main differentiation.
In land battles, that was the main difference. Round cannonball is exactly what it says. It's a big round ball which goes shooting out of the barrel. Canister is a container of lots of small balls which is fired in the same way, but when the container the balls are in breaks on the point at the moment of firing, and the balls fan out from the barrel of the gun like huge shotgun
shotgun,
pellets,
yeah.
giant shotgun. Very effective up to about 300 yards. I've actually got home two grape shot balls which I picked up on the battlefield of Borodino.
So there's still stuff lying around on Borodino.
There's
that you
still,
picked up.
yes, and Borodino, like a lot of places, was fought over subsequently by the Russians and Germans. So you get trenches and
Yeah, you've got these fortified
Russian
lines
tanks.
that people use again because there's already something there.
So
I mean this. Sorry.
no, just saying that the AI is countering actually my strategy by deploying skirmishers against my artillery. So skirmishers obviously spread out would be less vulnerable to the canister, and are now inflicting casualties upon my artillery. So I'm moving in these guys to try and flank the skirmishers again.
One of the things about canister was though you couldn't use, well, you could use it anywhere, but it wasn't something that was very directional. Like you were saying, it spreads out like a shotgun, and it didn't care who was in front of it.
No.
And so you had to keep your own troops out of the kind of arc of fire of these things, otherwise you would blow your own men away as much as the enemy.
Yes, yes. The variant we were talking about from cannonball and canister comes on shipboard, where they would fire chain shot, which is, if you imagine a ball cut in half and the two halves connected by a length of chain, you'd fire that at the enemy ship's rigging, and it was designed to rip through the ropes and hold the masts and sails on and stuff like that.
So here I'm continuously trying to retreat units that have suffered a lot of casualties, a lot of fatigue, and force the enemy to face some more fresher troops
Yeah,
in there.
that's good. That's good.
In time, though, all of my troops obviously will suffer significant fatigue.
As long as you're doing more to the enemy,
Exactly.
it's a good trade.
So my artillery is doing a great job over here. We got zoom down a bit. We got a very direct line of fire to the enemy lines.
Excellent. That's almost the enfilading shot we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. If you get the ball to bounce through the ranks.
Bounce through the ranks, yes. I wonder whether, in fact, you were a French marshal in a previous life.
I hope not.
Oh, okay.
Being Dutch, I have my interest on the other side actually.
But you did fight for both sides.
I did, yes, when forced to.
When forced to, yes. There was in the Grande Armée that went into Russia, there was a Dutch surgeon who kept a very good account of the campaign. I found the biographies of ordinary soldiers most illuminating.
Yeah, it must be a very different story from the diaries of the commanders.
Of the diaries of the great and good who are trying to justify themselves. This
Exactly.
particular doctor found that if he made the troops drink tea made from chamomile or mint or anything, his troops survived much better than others who were left to drink the water, because water was not pure. Cattle and sheep and goodness knows what else is food in it. But if you drank tea, the water boils and it purifies the water.
So those are the details you will only pick up by looking into the smaller
That's right.
scale.
That's right.
So in a second, we're going to go to the other screen now, to the board gaming screen, where we're playing the Battle of Waterloo in parallel with the digital reenactment. So we got a great number of miniatures over there, following the Field of Glory rules. We can see the commanders. We got the Wellington. We got Napoleon there, not selected by their physical likeness to the historical counterpart. For now, we see some British troops returning, which I actually was hoping that the flat good. So I might have to extend the line a bit again. But so far, I feel very, very confident here, actually, about holding this hill.
This is good.
I think it's the artillery, my artillery carrying the day over here.
You can see by the line of casualties where the fighting is taking place.
Exactly, yes.
You mentioned physical characteristics. It's a little known fact that all the great troublemakers in the world are short. Alexander the Great was short, Napoleon was short, Hitler was short and a vegetarian, and my wife is also short.
Okay, so we're gonna go over to the other room right now where they're standing and waiting to get an interview with one of the commanders over there.
Hi guys, we're live back with the Field of Glory Napoleonics tabletop battle, and I'm here with Jerome, who's in charge of which command are you? Who are we here? Jerome is the 5th and 6th Division, and been leading the assault on Hougoumont, and he has some very good news for Napoleon. Tell us what happened, Jerome.
A successful assault by 4 units.
So the
Hougoumont has fallen.
Hougoumont has fallen. This is a disastrous blow for the British so early in the day. So let's just have a look. We'll just bring the camera in here. So we can see the French flag is now flying over Hougoumont. The British have been repulsed. I'm not sure. What's the plan now? Was this expected, or?
We shall consolidate and push on to the ridge.
Consolidate and push on. Sounds like a plan. Thanks very much, Jerome. Next, we're going to have a quick update from Wellington. So, Wellington, if you move forwards a little bit. Wellington, it doesn't sound like things are going to plan just at the moment.
No, it really isn't. Wellington described the battle as a very near-run thing and a very scary thing, and so it's proving. We've had our foot guards bounced out of Hougoumont here. They're still in the fight, and we've got reinforcement foot guards here, so I haven't given up on Hougoumont yet. I think we might yet be able to hold that, even though they've managed to take the first part of it.
So what's the plan then? You're going to throw more troops in, try and take it back?
My local commander will have a good go at getting that back. We need to buy the time.
Okay.
We're waiting for the Prussians. We need to buy time in this game.
But are you sure they'll arrive?
No, this is a worry. And it's an even bigger worry if we go down to my other flank.
Let's zoom in on the British left flank. What is happening over here at Papelotte?
Well, at Papelotte we had a lot of excitement here where we've actually lost. In fact, this is the first routing unit in the game here. We've lost a demi-grade of Nassau troops.
So Nassau's have routed.
They have. They're not the best troops. Wellington put them over here with a weak flank here, hoping to delay and wait for the Prussians. We have done quite well. We've held on with another force here in another part of the village, and we've actually repelled an assault from the French here that came in across the road. We stopped it on the road and had a massive firefight on the road, and we forced them back into the village.
So how are the
So-
Nassaus holding out? Are they weakening? Are
They are weakening. They are wobbling. In the game, we've got 3 levels of troops. Troops are either perfectly steady, or they're disrupted, or they're wavering, and then after that, it's routing. So these guys are disrupted. So
Okay.
they're feeling the pain. There's a lot of smoke going on
And there
there.
seem to be a fair number of French troops that look relatively fresh that can be thrown into the fight.
There are indeed. The only thing that may save us here, and we're hoping to just buy time waiting for the Prussians, is that we have a small river here which is very difficult to cross. So here we have a bit of protection. So this was my biggest worry, and we've just about held on there, and we've rushed the Royal Horse Artillery over from reserve to provide some support.
So
here.
the Wellington is already allocating his reserves.
Already, and actually Wellington is already very busy. He's been down here allocating command points to get reinforcements of ammunition into Hougoumont, and he's raced all the way back along the line now to rally a bunch of his British troops who've been forced back off the ridge by the long-range bombardment.
Okay, so everything's looking a little bit nervous for the British at the moment.
It is, and actually he described this section of the battlefield as something like one heck of a pounding, and that's exactly what we've been facing. So we still have troops weakened here. We need to get them back in line and looking strong before the big attack comes in.
Yep, so you're expecting the attack to be launched imminently by the French.
We can see Marshal Ney moving around in front of a massive infantry divisions here.
Okay, thanks very much, Wellington. We are now going to head back over to Scourge of War, Waterloo, to the live digital broadcast. We'll speak to you again later.
And we are back at the digital reenactment over here. So we pushed back the main push. We lost some troops that are running away actually. We won't be seeing them again probably.
Oh, I don't think so. They're off to Paris.
If they do come back, we will be sure they get punished for their actions. So far though, we're nearing the end of this scenario. We've got about 5 minutes left. We have to hold this specific location. Push up a tiny bit and reorganize a bit so we got first troops standing in front again. Some troops have been retreated and have been rested. Some haven't even seen a whole lot of combat. These guys only suffered 26 casualties as of yet, so they can easily carry part of the line. And the enemy artillery has done a significant amount of damage on parts of my line and routed a good number of my units, but overall I'm in pretty good shape over here.
This is good because this is in effect turning the British right flank around the back of Hougoumont. So by bypassing Hougoumont, we seem to have achieved the objective that Napoleon would have wanted, drawing off reserves from the English centre, or the Allied centre I should say, and taking an advantageous position. Now with the similar success on the right wing at Papelotte, the French army is in a very good place to deal a critical blow to the Allied effort.
So things are going well.
Things are going well, and remember the aim of the French attack through Belgium is to get to Brussels, force the Brussels government to change sides, because in a couple of years previously, the Dutch-Belgian troops had fought for Napoleon.
Did the Dutch-Belgians make up a significant part of the coalition forces against him? Would it have really made that much difference?
Yes, and it's like a domino effect. You get the Dutch-Belgians to change back to Napoleon's side. The Danes won't be able to stand on their own, and then you can start picking off the small German states. Remember that Germany is not a single country at this period. It is a lot of separate states. There are bigger ones. Prussia is the biggest. Bavaria might be the next biggest, but the Hanoverians will never change. But it would be important to, because the King of England is a Hanoverian. It's important to neutralise Hanover and stop any flow of troops through to swell the ranks of the British army.
So do you think it was a realistic possibility if Napoleon had won Waterloo, he could have gone on to win this war?
No. In the vicinity of where we're fighting now at Waterloo, there's the Allied British and Dutch Belgians with the Hanoverians. There's a separate army with the Prussians. The Russians were marching about 300,000 men through Germany. The Austrians were marching another 200,000 men, and Italy, even Italy, under one of Napoleon's brothers, had turned against him and was attacking France up through the Alps.
So he had more than 500,000 men on top of this to deal with.
Yes, he had no chance. I mean, war at this level is a process of attrition. You grind down the other guy's willingness and ability to fight. And France, by this time, after nearly 28 years of continuous warfare, is exhausted. The people are sick of war. Conscription had been introduced, and they found that the likely candidates for conscription were amputating their own thumbs, so they would be disabled and couldn't go and join the army.
So there was really no appetite for war anymore in the general population.
Very little, very little. Despite the glory and the success that Napoleon had brought his armies to, there were factions who still loved him, and that's obvious by the way they treated his body when he had died in Saint Helena and was brought back to Paris. But this amputation of the thumb business, the musket is loaded by putting the cartridge down the barrel and then pulling the ramrod out, and the ramrod had to be held in fairly stiffly to stop it flopping about and being left behind. You can't pull it out without a working thumb.
So the best that Napoleon could have hoped for really was to delay the inevitable by winning here, unless some miraculous event had happened.
What he would have liked is a peace settlement which left him in charge of France, but nobody trusted him. Nobody trusted him at all.
After everything that happened, it's unlikely that that could.
There had been peace treaties before, which were always broken by Napoleon preempting somebody else attacking him.
Because this was, I think, the 7th coalition of nations against Napoleon.
I believe that's right, yes.
So this, he'd been through this 6 times, won 6 times before, but at some point.
Excellent. We have won a major victory.